They thought I was the joke of the family, until my son stood up and shattered their pride with just 7 words. The room was cold, but my hands were colder. As I stepped into my father's lawyer's office, a strange silence hung in the air. Not the respectful kind, but the heavy, suffocating kind that wraps around you when people are waiting for something to happen or fall apart. My siblings were already there, seated like they owned the place. My eldest brother sat back with his legs crossed, confident and smug, while my sisters whispered among themselves with smiles they didn't bother to hide. They looked like they'd come for a celebration, not the reading of our father's final will. I felt out of place, underdressed, and outnumbered. But more than anything, I felt like I didn't belong. Growing up, I was always the one who didn't fit their mold. I wasn't the most successful, I didn't have the highest paying job, and I didn't spend my life impressing people at family dinners. But I did what mattered to me. I raised a son with honesty and worked hard to live a life I wasn't ashamed of. Still, in this room, all of that felt so small. As I took a seat at the end of the table, I avoided their eyes. I could feel their judgment, their smirks, their quiet amusement. To them, I was the failure, the one Dad would never reward. And maybe they were right. The lawyer, an elderly man with kind eyes and a serious voice, opened the file and began reading. He started with formalities, listing Dad's possessions, properties, bank accounts, stocks, the farmhouse we spent summers in, and that grand old watch he used to wear with pride. Every word brought back memories, some warm, some bitter. Then came the names. My eldest brother got the family home. My second brother received the beach house and a hefty bank account. My sister was left the antique collection and shares in Dad's company. As the list went on, I felt myself sinking deeper into my chair. No one looked at me. Not yet. Then, the lawyer paused. "To my son," he said, and I felt a tiny flame of hope light up. "He shall receive." My heart thumped. Nothing. Nothing. That was it. One word, no explanation, no apology, no reason. I sat frozen. My siblings burst into laughter, mocking, gleeful, cruel. "Wow, not even a book," my sister said between giggles. My brother shook his head with exaggerated pity. Guess Dad knew who the real kids were. I clenched my jaw. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? I had just been erased from the legacy of the man whose name I still carried. I looked at the floor, pretending not to care, trying not to break. But I wasn't alone. My 10-year-old son, who had insisted on coming with me that morning, stood up beside me. I felt his small fingers wrap around mine, firm and full of quiet courage. I glanced at him, confused, but he didn't look at me. He looked straight at my siblings, the ones who were still laughing, and said in a clear, calm voice, "My dad gave me everything that matters." Silence. The room froze. All eyes turned to him. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It carried something stronger than volume, truth. My son's eyes didn't blink. He wasn't embarrassed and he wasn't afraid. He stood tall, proud, and certain. In that moment, something shifted. The smirks faded. The lawyer lowered his head slightly, almost respectfully. And my siblings, well, they had nothing to say. Because what do you say when a child tells you that your greed means nothing? I stared at my son, stunned, not just by what he said, but by what it meant. He wasn't thinking about houses or money. He was thinking about late-night talks, bedtime stories, scraped knees I'd kissed better, and times I stood up for him when the world didn't. He was talking about the man I had tried to be every single day, even when I felt like I was failing. And in that moment, I knew I hadn't failed. I had succeeded in the only way that really counts. My siblings could have the properties, the bank accounts, the things with price tags. I had something richer, a child who knew the worth of love, of presence, of truth. My father's will may not have held my name, but my son's words carved it in stone. And no piece of paper could ever take that away. As we walked out of the room, my son still holding my hand, I felt taller. Not because I had won, but because I hadn't lost. I had raised a boy who stood up when it mattered, who spoke the truth without fear, and who reminded me, without even knowing, that the real inheritance isn't left behind in safes or vaults. It's passed down in values, in choices, and in quiet, powerful moments when someone chooses love over legacy. And that was more than enough. The car ride home was unusually quiet. My son stared out the window, his small hand still resting in mine as if he knew I needed it more than he did. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the road. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running from my feelings. I felt them, every single one of them. The humiliation, the ache of being forgotten by someone who was supposed to love me unconditionally, and the surprising strength of a child's voice that had cut through all the noise. I glanced at my son, wondering if he truly understood what he had done. Those 7 words had pierced not only my heart, but the pride of a family that had spent years trying to make me feel small. When we reached home, I opened the door to our modest little house. No marble floors, no chandeliers, no grand portraits on the walls, just simplicity, warmth, and memories carved into every inch. The smell of evening tea from the neighbor's house wafted in, and a familiar sense of comfort settled over me. My son dropped his school bag in the corner, sat on the floor, and began flipping through his drawing book like it was any other evening. But I knew this day had changed something deep inside me. It wasn't just about what had happened at the will reading, it was about what I had realized about myself. For years I had measured my worth by comparisons. Who earned more? Who drove a bigger car? Who got mentioned more proudly at family events? I had quietly accepted being the least successful one. But today, my son reminded me that success wasn't about applause. It was about the quiet difference we make in someone's life. Later that night, I sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea, the overhead bulb flickering slightly as I stared at the empty chair across from me. My father's face came to mind, not the man in the casket, but the man I remembered from my childhood. I remembered the time he taught me how to ride a bicycle, his strong arms keeping me balanced until I could do it on my own. I remembered the scolding looks he gave when I brought home bad grades, but also the soft tap on my shoulder when I tried again. And I wondered, what changed? At what point did I stop being his pride and become his silence? Had I disappointed him that much by choosing a simpler life? Was it because I didn't chase power or wealth like the others did? Or was it something deeper, his own fears, his unspoken expectations? The truth was, I'd never know. And maybe that was the real pain. Not the absence of money, but the absence of answers. The kind of emptiness you can't deposit in a bank or sign away in a will. The next few days passed like a blur. Family calls were minimal. No one bothered to explain anything to me. A few relatives texted polite condolences and subtle congratulations to my siblings. I didn't respond. I didn't have the energy. But what surprised me was how little it hurt. The truth had already been spoken in that lawyer's office, and it wasn't in the form of a legal document. It was in my son's voice. That memory became a quiet anchor I held on to, and while the world around me remained the same, something inside me had shifted. One morning I dropped my son off at school. As he waved goodbye and ran toward his class, I noticed the pride in his walk. It wasn't the kind of pride that comes from trophies or medals. It was the kind that grows in children who feel safe, loved, and seen. That was the day I made a decision, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. I began writing. Not a will, not a memoir, just simple stories. Stories of my father, of my own journey, of my son, of the things we lose when we chase what doesn't last. I didn't write to publish. I wrote to understand, to heal, to let go of the weight I'd been carrying all my life, the need to be validated by people who never really saw me. Weeks passed, and the silence from my siblings continued. But I no longer checked my phone waiting for their calls. I stopped, measuring my worth by what others gave me, and started noticing what I had already built. My son began showing me his drawings again, sketches of fathers and sons, of people holding hands, of hearts stitched back together with golden thread. One night, I asked him why he drew that. He smiled and said, "Because even when things break, they can be fixed with something stronger." I hugged him tightly, tears quietly falling where he couldn't see. In his innocent wisdom, he had given me my second lesson. The first was courage, and now, healing. One Sunday afternoon, as we were planting flowers in the small patch of garden outside our home, my son looked up and said, "I hope I can be like you when I grow up." That one sentence felt like redemption, not from the world, not even from my father, but from the self-doubt I had carried for years. Because in the end, it wasn't about the legacy I didn't get. It was about the legacy I was living. Not in buildings or wealth, but in hearts and minds that were being shaped every single day by love. So, while the world may never see my name in papers or awards or property deeds, I have found something far greater. I have found peace in who I am. I have found strength in being underestimated. And above all, I have found that the richest inheritance a man can leave isn't written in a will. It's written in the way he is remembered by the ones who love him most. And that, for me, was enough. This story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Other Side Story. Join us for more emotional journeys that stay with you long after the video ends.